I love science fiction because it imagines the future, the unknown, the unknowable. For centuries, the genre has explored future tech as small as a human blood cell to worlds and intelligences the size of galactic empires. Hi, I'm Michael Leverts, and this is Fit to be Read. Over the past 3 months, I've been interviewing and asking authors to share their thoughts about some of the books on my upcoming Top 210 Science Fiction Books episode. Because these authors are legends and represent an amazing cross-section of the genre, I also asked them about a lot of other things. I'm going to be presenting their answers over a 4-part series that will feature discussions about other dazzling authors, major influences, the current environment of science fiction literature, diversity in publishing, more book recommendations, and of course, the big question, why do you love science fiction? I'm excited to share this with you, and I ask that you also share with me, with your comments, why you love science fiction. Science fiction legend Greg Bear has won multiple Hugo Awards, 5 Nebula Awards, multiple Endeavor and other major awards. He is the author of Blood Music, Moving Mars, The Forge of God, Darwin's Radio, Foundation and Chaos, and many others. Why do you love science fiction?
I've loved it since I was a kid, and had the bejesus scared out of me by Harryhausen's Emer from 20 million miles to Earth, and actually by comic books and later by reading science fiction books, paperbacks and so on. It was the golden age of paperbacks, and I started buying those through Scholastic Library and schools and through my own going to bookstores. But I wasn't able to get to bookstores much of the 60s. So that started in the 60s, late 60s and early 70s for me.
Gareth Powell has won BSFA awards for his novels Ack Ack McAck and Embers of War. Last year, he co-authored the space opera Light Chaser with Peter F. Hamilton. Powell has recently published the action-packed space thriller Stars and Bones, a 2022 release.
I love science fiction because of the scope of the genre. You can literally write about anything within the whole stretch of time and space, from the beginning of the universe to the end, and everything in between.
Adrian Tchaikovsky is the Arthur C. Clarke Award-winning author of Children of Time, BSFA award-winning author of Shards of Earth and Children of Ruin, British Fantasy Award winner of The Tiger and the Wolf, and currently a 2022 Hugo nominee for his novella, Elder Race. You were very generous to share your thoughts about one of the books appearing on my upcoming 210 Science Fiction Books episode. Can you share with the book community why you love science fiction?
Yeah, I mean, it's really more that I find when I'm reading a book that doesn't have any kind of speculative element at all, my imagination just can't really get its teeth into it. I mean, it can be, whether it's an overt thing like spaceships and dragons, or whether it's simply a suggestion of the surreal or the occult or whatever. I need something more to get to grips with than just the world as it is. Otherwise I find narratives don't tend to hold my interest.
Steve Bellinger's self-published time travel book, The Chronicar, won the Black Science Fiction Society Best Indie Book Award in 2018. I'll be sharing more of my interview and discussion of this great book later this fall. Why do you love science fiction?
Why does anybody love science fiction? Why do you love science fiction? I mean, it's just fascinating. It's looking into the future, different universes, different realities. And again, the best science fiction can be predictions of the future, because, well, a worldwide pandemic and climate change, these are all the subject of science fiction books and movies only, recent years. I'm also fascinated by high technology devices and ships and things like that, like the USS Enterprise or the Thunderbirds. I don't know if you've heard of that series. The Sea View from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, the Jupiter 2 from Lost in Space, and the Chronicar. I love fancy sci-fi vehicles.
Nebula Award winner Kat Rambeau also has a new space opera out this year, so check out her Locus Award nominated 2022 release, You Sexy Thing. Well, here we go. So first question.
All right.
Why do you love science fiction?
I love science fiction for two reasons. And one is a very shallow one, which is I love the glittery trappings of science fiction and the robots and the stars and the nanites and all of that. And the other is, I think, a more deeper and profound reason, which is that I think science fiction and fantasy both speak to the human soul on a level that is, I think, more engaging often than sort of what we call literary science fiction.
Locus Award winner, Philip K. Dick Award winner, multiple BSFA Award winner, Theodore Sturgeon Award winner, Hugo Award winner, John W. Campbell Memorial Award winner. Ian McDonald is the author of new classics The Dervish House, River of Gods, Desolation Road, and more. Why do you love science fiction?
I think what it is, it's kind of a, somebody once described it as fun with your, this is an old quote, it's described it as fun with your new head. It's kind of benign. At its best, it's a benign, mind-expanding drug. Terribly addictive, but deep down harmless, that actually is good for you as well. Science fiction allows me to ask questions of the world I couldn't in any other form of writing, and I like those questions.
Award-winning author Stacy Cade, also writing under the name S.A. Barnes, recently released a new science fiction novel, Dead Silence. Cade writes horror, fantasy, young adult fiction, and romance, and she loves science fiction. All right, Stacy, why do you love science fiction?
You know, I hadn't actually thought about it until this question came up, and I would blame part of it on my upbringing. We're a big sci-fi family. I grew up watching the original Star Trek on VHS tapes that my dad had recorded off the TV. I'm aging myself here. And it was a kind of a family event to watch Star Trek Next Generation and all of those things. And I remember actually getting in trouble. We were speaking briefly before we started this, the novelizations of books. And I remember getting in trouble once because I think I had my dad's novelization of Star Wars and I had put it in my mouth to do something, like to hold on to it while I was doing something else. And I was missing my two front teeth at the time. And I got in trouble for it because it left teeth marks. And I was like, no, it wasn't me. And he's like, there's a gap where your teeth should be. It was totally me. So some of it is that. But honestly, I think in general, I'm also a big fan of, romance. I think that I like science fiction for some of the same reasons, which is hope. I feel like science fiction offers the possibility and the hope that we're going to get it right in some way, whether that's, getting off of the planet to live somewhere else, or just becoming a society that is more advanced and more kind and compassionate to the human beings on this planet, or the people who, entities that live elsewhere, whatever. I feel like I'm drawn to science fiction because of the hope.
Adam Roberts' novels have won many BSFA awards, including this novel, Jack Glass, which also won the 2013 John W. Campbell Award. He is the author of Beta, The Thing Itself, New Model Army, Atom Robots, and an essential for any sci-fi fan, The History of Science Fiction. Why do you love science fiction?
Because it still blows my mind after all these years. I started reading it as a kid. It was my gateway drug into reading as such, actually, as a little kid, reading Golden Age science fiction and New Wave science fiction in the 70s and the early 80s, before Star Wars became a big deal, actually, and science fiction became more mainstream, when it was more of a kind of niche thing. And it was just so imaginatively thrilling and exciting. And I've never lost that. And I'm a writer and I teach creative writing, and some of my colleagues who write regular novels will sometimes say to me, when are you going to write a proper novel, Adam, and give all this science fiction stuff up? It's, I'm in my late 50s. Is it still seemly to love science fiction as much as I do? And I always tell them I have no interest in writing a conventional mainstream novel, because science fiction is still the form that has the greatest imaginative potential. For me, it's like, and the two great loves in my kind of life in a literary sense are science fiction and poetry. And I get a similar thing out of the best of science fiction. That moment when you read a poem and it transports you. It's so powerful and moving and affecting. There's something kind of transcendent about the best poetic image and about the best science fiction. So when people ask me to define science fiction, I'll sometimes say it's hard to do, but I'll say it's that moment at the beginning of Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey, when he throws the bone up in the air and it spins up in the air, and then suddenly it's a spaceship in orbit around the Earth. It's so powerful and affecting, that moment. I find it really beautiful and really kind of wonderful.
Wole Talabi has won and been nominated for many awards, especially for his short stories and his anthologies. His short story, The Regression Test, is one of the short stories that I highlighted earlier this year on my top 10 science fiction short stories of all time episode. What do you love about science fiction? Why do you love it?
It's, again, another really good question. And I think it's directly linked to what I just said, right, about Embassy Town and the effect it had on me. It's that almost feeling like your mind is expanding when you read something that is so creative, so detailed, so well thought out, but also entertaining and fascinating. That, that pure sense of wonder that so many of us come to science fiction for. I guess I'm just like all the other pilgrims coming to the temple of science fiction for that, right? It's that sense of wonder, that sense of both understanding the world, but also understanding that there's so much more potential to the world, and speculating about it, about what it could be, about how it could go, about how we could understand it, how we could interact with, technology, with other alien creatures out there, with our understanding of the universe, in order to know more about the human condition, about human potential, and so on. I think that sense of wonder, that sense of the mind expanding, is something I got very early on as a child, and I guess I'll continue to search for it.
Rachel Aukes' books and short fiction have won a number of honors and awards. Among her most celebrated books are Fringe Runner, 100 Days in Deadland, and Collision. Why do you love science fiction?
I love science fiction because I love asking what if, and that's what science fiction is all about. It takes what if and then it kind of takes it even farther by connecting it to the human condition. So what if we do have AI? What does that mean to us as a humanity? What if climate change continues? It really focuses on the repercussions of what can happen if we're not careful with technology, but it's that speculative piece of science fiction that I've always loved about it. Is you get some really creative stories and just love it.
What is it about science fiction that just draws you in?
I don't know. It just seems something that I thought was very cool and very pertinent, to use a word which often appeared in science fiction headlines. The truth was, it was just the most exciting form of literature out there, along with fantasy, and because I was in with a group of people at my high school that were pretty much into all of the branches of comic books and fantasy and science fiction and everything. I met them early on, and we got together and we started putting stuff together and creating stuff, and that was amazing. It was fun to watch. But I'd already sold my first short story at that point. I was sending stories out in the 1966 or thereabouts, sending stories out to get them published and getting rejected all over until Famous Science Fiction picked up one of my short stories, paid me $10, and then I was off and running.
Yeah,
I'll be honest with you, Adam. I've started the thing itself, and I'm at this section where I'm reading about Lunita, referring back to what you were just talking about the prose, and I'm loving it. But I'm not this one particular section. I'm having to go back and read a few pages a few times. But I love that. I love that experience, and I love that you made me do that.
Well, I'm glad you're loving it, obviously. But then you could hardly say to my face that you hate my book. So yeah. You're being very diplomatic. We'll put it that way.
I might not bring it up. It
is. I mean, it is what it is, and I'm not going to. I think it's foolish for any writer, and I teach creative writing, so I tell my students this. I think it's foolish to think I have to kind of imitate whatever is the most commercially successful idiom of the moment. That's what I need to do because I want to be a millionaire and have movies made out of my books. I think that's it. Readers aren't stupid. Readers can tell if there's a kind of false note if you're trying for something which isn't you. You need to find your own voice, and you need to write in your own voice. And it would be foolish of me to try and write a different way, I think. But yeah, that's, again, it goes back to the very first question you asked me. The thing I love about science fiction is it is hospitable to that, and it has there are fans of science fiction who are prepared to try all sorts of new things. I'm not sure that's true of other genres, not even literary fiction.
Keep an eye out for the next installment in this series featuring some of the same authors and others, and don't forget to let me know in the comments why you love science fiction.
And I suppose because maybe I take a slightly different view of what science fiction is. To go back to my example of the bone transforming into the spaceship in 2001, it seems to be a kind of poetic image, but it's also kind of a metaphor. And it seems to me that the stuff of science fiction, the spaceships and the robots and the imagined worlds, are metaphors. So there's a line I sometimes quote from Samuel Delany, and he says science fiction is a metaphorical literature. And it's a metaphorical literature because it aims to represent the world without reproducing it. It's not trying to be like a realist novel. It's not mimetic. It's not simply a mirror showing the world back to itself. It's representing the world. It's about the world. If it weren't about our world and about people like us, it wouldn't have any purchase on our lives. It wouldn't say anything to us. But it's about our world reimagined in metaphorical ways. And often metaphor can be really eloquent and really powerful. And I suppose I come at it from that different angle, which perhaps puts me more in a kind of fantastical sense. I don't know. But I think Chris Priest, who I know a little bit, is he's a kind of almost kind of poetic writer of science fiction, and he sort of works metaphorically.
Thank you for watching. I'm Michael Leverts, and this is Fit to be Read.